Hey, I'm Marty Phillips. I'm with Puddle Glum's Music Collection here today. I'm going to talk about some albums from the Jesus movement and some albums from Christian artists that started way back. Really good music. They don't get the attention that they should because they're legends in a little niche that was quite big for a while. Now they just kind of, you can see Skillet or, any of those bands now that are popular, POD. They're on the regular labels. They're real, they've gotten big or were big. But this is a different time. A lot of the guys from the hippie movement and ladies were, they found God. They got out of a lot of messed up ways. And this is a little story about that time. You had bands, a lot of the earlier bands from like Calvary Chapel out in California, Southern California started out. A lot of these hippies were coming to Christ in some of these churches, and they had to work with that. And they brought their music with them. People like Love Song. Love Song were more of a country rock, back then were like a Buffalo Springfield or Poco or that type of thing. You always had Andre Crouch and the Disciples. They did everything from soul to funk to, gospel. And they brought that to us. Back in the day. Sweet Comfort Band was another band out of Calvary Chapel. Had more of that yacht rock feel, Doobie Brothers, Toto, all that type of feel. One of their later albums. DeGarmo Key came around later. They, the keyboardist was really influenced by, ELP and the guitar player from ZZ Top. This album kind of had a little bit of a prog feel to it. They got more and more pop rock as they went, and then they went into the CCM, and then they got a little harder later on again. Resurrection Man was one of the bands that started the harder rock. They were more like Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, a little bit of all that, a little harder rock. It started in the late 70s. They actually started in 72. Didn't get a record album out until 78. This is their 79 release, Rainbow's End. That's kind of a nice cutout for their album there. A little bit of Jefferson Airplane in there too. But they kind of, at times they had a lot of their own style, but they borrowed a lot from that. You had Lamb, which were, from the Messianic Jewish era. They kind of came, Jews for Jesus was real popular during the Jesus movement back then in the 70s. And that was their little take on it. We had Daryl Mansfield. He came from Gentle Faith, which was one of the bands from Calvary Chapel. He had a little more blues influences in his music. His earlier stuff was a little hard rock. And then he went more blues as he went, but he even went into metal for a while, a little bit of metal. Daniel Amos, they came out of Calvary Chapel, started as a country rock band like the Eagles, and then totally got more rock and roll, and then they got more new wave and started more of an alternative sound. Barry Maguire, you know him from Seeds of Change. I'm sorry, Barry Maguire, didn't mean Seeds of Change. This is his album Seeds. Barry Maguire, he had the song Eve of Destruction that got real popular, and then he became a Christian, put out a bunch of albums about Christianity. You have the 77s that came out later. A lot of bands like Daniel Amos, 77s, Adam Again, they came out with more of an alternative new wave sound that was popular at the time, mid-late 80s. You had Paul Clark. He started out acoustically in the Jesus movement, went on to do more jazz influenced things like a Steely Dan type sound. Paul Clark. This is his album Hand of the Plow. You had Mylon in the early 70s, Mylon Lefevre. He actually became quite popular in the music industry in the 80s, 90s. But this is more of his bluesy stuff. He had a lot of guys from, can't think of the band now, Atlanta Rhythm Section on this. Most of the guys of Atlanta Rhythm Section played on this album. Very good album. You had Phil Keaggy. One of the first Christian musicians, all instrumental album. Very good guitar player. Started out with glass harp. in the early 70s, and then just started playing on his own. A lot of lyrics about the Lord on his stuff. He did a lot of different styles, but he also did a lot of instrumental albums, just straight instrumental. And of course, Bob Dylan in '79 put out Slow Train A-Comin', and that really pushed the door open for a lot more contemporary music in the Christian music industry, and also in the secular music industry. Second Chapter of Acts, one of those bands that started a lot of it, two sisters and a brother. They sang background vocals on a lot of the early Christian music albums, and they were great singers together and pretty popular. A lot of their stuff was pretty mellow, but sometimes they had some heavier stuff there. Larry Norman was considered the guy who started it all. He really didn't. There are a lot of bands before that and people that were talking about Jesus with more contemporary music, Excursions, and you had, Crusaders. There's a lot of people back then that were experimenting and playing different music, but he always gets, this is a trifold from Verve Records, but he always gets the nod because he was on the bigger label. When I was growing up, there wasn't a lot of hard rock stuff. The only stuff we had were like Daniel Band out of Canada, Jerusalem out of Sweden, and then the Resurrection Band. Jerusalem, a really good band out of Sweden that started in the 70s too. We had Servant over here. And Michael Lamardian, Adam again. Michael Lamardian, you know him from producing almost so many albums in the market. He also a great piano player, got Grammys for producing albums. In the early days, he was doing these Christian albums on, sometimes secular labels, and he was using people like Larry Carlton back then in the early 70s and stuff. Great guitar player that, was pretty popular on a lot of studio stuff. So Dean Parks, a lot of different musicians that became very popular later. Stryper later came, opened up the doors for a lot of new metal and stuff. So, they're the ones that really put the stuff on the map. Nobody even knew a lot of this stuff was going on until Stryper came. But that's Stryper's To Hell with the Devil album. But there was so much more before them. Of course, there's Petra. I have a lot of Petra back there. Petra is one of the forerunners. It started in '72 too. Didn't come out with an album until, '74 and '76. So yeah, I just wanted to bring a couple things to you. You got the Talbot brothers, you have Randy Matthews. I can go on and on, but I'd be here for hours. But I just wanted to let you know that there's a lot of good music out there from the '70s, early '80s, that were Christian artists that were really playing a lot of good music. So maybe check out some of those albums, see how they sound, see if you like them. My name is Marty, and we'll see you in the next show. Bye.